The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tally Olson. We are back. Retro Rangers in the Zone. I'm Ralph Tycho of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and it's my pleasure to introduce George Grimm, the host of it all. George.
Okay. So welcome back to the Retro Rangers podcast. I'm your host, George Grimm. And my guest this evening is my longtime friend, cohort, partner in crime, and very often voice of reason, Steve Carroll. Welcome to the show.
The voice of reason. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. I almost got killed one night for being the voice of reason.
Yeah, well, that's because
I tried to wake you up at Pavonia Avenue on the way from a Ranger game. And it was a long day and a lot of beer. You were like, "What are you waking me up for now?"
Yes.
How did you guys meet and become friends?
In work. We both worked for the commercial bank in Jersey City called the Trust Company of New Jersey. That no longer exists. We both worked in the audit department. George was the IT person, or back in the day, the EDP auditor.
Right.
And I was, what was I, senior auditor?
Yeah.
Audit manager, or something along those lines. Cliff always moved around the titles to give you a BS title.
Right.
Oh, we're going to make you a super...
In the 80s. I started there in 83. I think you started just a little while later. And so it's been a long time,
Yeah, it's been almost 40 years.
Yeah.
Talk about your Ranger Connect. How did that get started?
How did you get to be a Ranger fan?
Actually, it started, and I didn't even know it was starting. My father and mother took me to the old Garden, and the only thing I really remember about the game was, I don't know if I was at the game where Jacques got hurt,
right?
But I was at a game where a goalie got hurt. I mean, I was all of 5 or 6 years old, and the biggest thing of that evening I remember, and George and I talked about it before, the ice cream sundaes with the wooden spoons and the big dollop of chocolate, fudge in the middle. That was the best part of the night.
Yeah.
And I really didn't pay too much attention to hockey until I was in my early teens. My parents split up. We moved back to the New York area. And, back in the day on Channel 9, you had the Schaefer Circle of Sports, which was the Mets, the Knicks, and the Rangers. And back in the day with the basketball, you had the Busher and Frazier. You had a really good team. The Mets were up and coming, and they were going to win a World Series in '69, and the Rangers were a good team as well. But I started watching them on Saturday nights, and I didn't know a lot of the rules. Icing made no sense to me when I was a kid, because I'm like, why can they shoot it down the ice? And it doesn't count now, but it counts later. But I was dating a girl after high school, and her best friend was dating another guy who happened to be a Ranger season ticket holder. And it was funny, he was teaching her, okay, who's the gag line? And she would rattle off, Gilbert, Rattel, and Hatfield. After a while, she'd get it right. And in the same token, I'm learning. And again, just through my own interests, the Peter Puck days on NBC,
right.
I'd watch the game in the afternoon, and then sometimes I wouldn't have anything to do that night, and I'd get on the train and go to the city and scalp a ticket.
You could do that in those days.
Yeah, I get a $6 ticket for $10, and I wasn't even of drinking age at the time. It was a real long night sometimes.
Steve, did you have a favorite player in those days?
Back in the day, I liked Brett Park and Ed Giacomo. Those were probably my two favorite players in those days. Park was always like the New York version of Bobby Orr, very good defenseman. He could play with the puck. He was offensive. And Jacquemin would stand on his head to stop a puck, and then
he was great.
And then he was combined with Gilles Villemure for the few years there. And the two of them were the best in the league with the lowest goals average.
They won the Vezina in 1972. So,
yeah.
They were a good pair. They were a good tandem. So.
Yeah. And, like George and I, we've talked about it in the past. Like, I don't remember, like, Harry Howell playing and that, even though they were kind of mixed in at that time. With,
right.
Park and Rattel and Hatfield and Nielsen and those guys. But I don't really remember them. I just remember, like, the next wave, And I remember the Hartford watching the Bruins skating around with the Stanley Cup in the Garden. And that was, like the first taste of real Ranger disappointment.
Yeah. Well, that was the year that they actually should have won that year. They had the best team that year, but Jean Rattel broke his ankle before the end of the season.
Yeah.
And he was their best player, and he came back in the finals, but he was a shadow of his talent, and they just couldn't beat the Bruins.
Yeah, with that famous Garden Ice in February with the circus and all of that stuff going on, the ice would always turn into crap, and somebody always got hurt.
Yeah,
they'd have a good team, and then
career, he got his foot caught in a rut in the boards, and he broke his ankle very badly. I mean, they said that the bone was coming out from under his shin pad, so he was in bad shape. And he never played again. Yeah.
Well, he got hit in the eye too, playing in the playoffs one year.
Yes.
With against Philly, the puck came right up the shaft of his stick and into his eye.
Yeah. Well, he was involved in the fight with Dave Schultz too. That big
nobody came to help him.
That Vic Hatfield should have come in to help him with.
Yeah, but the pansy wouldn't come in, and he's like Ron Duguay, he'd shake his rear end but never do anything.
Yeah. But at the time Hatfield was hurt anyway. He had bad hands, and he was only playing because he told Emil he wanted to play. So, even if he got thrown out of the game, it really wouldn't have been a big loss to the team at the time. But that's all hindsight. So.
Yeah. And then they went on their little downward spiral.
When you guys first started working together, how did you come to know that you were hockey fans? And what was that about?
It was very easy. George had a desk in an adjoining office. There was probably at one time it was a glorified closet in the building. And when I went for the interview, he had a Pink Floyd bumper sticker and a Ranger bumper sticker, and I said, "I'm home. At least there's somebody here I'll get along with." And Christ, and we had a boss who liked the Ranger as well, so we got away with a little bit of stuff like being able to go into the city for open practices and things of that nature. But
we used to take long lunch hours and go over to Cosby's, and and just basically hang out, just look around and take our time going there, take our time coming back, and and it worked out well for us. We were both of the attitude that we could do anything we wanted, up until the time someone told us that we couldn't.
We could. Yeah.
I'm at a loss for questions, George.
Well, we would also talk about hockey. Since our boss liked hockey, we would sometimes, George would be just George and myself, and other times it would be myself, George, and our boss, and we'd be standing, around talking hockey. Last night's game, what game's coming up, how many games do they have left, and how many games do the Islanders have left, and who can have the most points, and, all of that kind of BS,
Yeah,
that was
awards and what have you. How has the game changed today than it was back then when you guys were sitting around rapping hockey?
It's changed drastically. I mean, the old saying, players are bigger, they're faster, they're stronger, which is true. The equipment, compared to what it was, Christ, in the 50s, it was horsehair, goalie pads, and heavy, hard plastic. And, you know, now the equipment is so light, and the skates with the plastic, I don't know what it's called, that holds the blade. But years ago, it was all metal under the boot.
Yeah, they're heavy.
You know? And it was leather, and the leather got wet. And now, Christ, the sticks are like a feather. You know, they weigh like maybe 5-6 ounces. And, you know, the skates are better. The athletes are better. They train year-round. You know, you had like Espo and that era. They needed training camp to get back into shape. Today's player, they need about a week and they're up to speed pretty much.
Yeah. Well, you know, as you said, everything got lighter too. I had the opportunity a couple months ago to pick up and the goalie pads, and just to pick it up, you know, and I was surprised at how light it was. It probably didn't weigh 3 pounds. I don't know. It was just very light, you know. And I remember the old pads were just heavy. And as you said, as the game went on, they absorbed the water from the ice. They absorbed the water from the guys sweating, and they got heavy. They were 10, 15 pounds each on the guys' legs. And you can tell that the goaltenders are quicker. I don't really like the fact that they play most of the games on their knees nowadays, but I don't like the butterfly style. But they, you know, it's still a very fast, very entertaining game, and I like to watch it. You know.
I mean, if you go back and you watch an old rerun of a game from the 60s and 70s, it's like they're skating in sand compared to today.
Yeah.
And you know, the speed and the moves, and you just sit there and shake your head, you know, like, my God, how did they get so damn fast all of a sudden? And the thing I know George and I always noticed was, like, back in the day, he had seats up in the blue seats. And you'd sit up there and go, yeah, they're moving fast. And then if we snuck down to the lower levels, or it was a practice and you were down at ice level, you were like, holy Christ.
Yeah.
These guys are like twice as fast.
Yeah. And I remember that one time we were down near ice level and we saw John Ogrodnik skate passes. Now, I didn't like John Ogrodnik. I don't know about you, but I hated the guy. But he just zipped right past us, and I was just shocked at how fast he was, you know?
Yeah. Well, I just remember one time with my son, he played hockey. I just, you know, never played, but I love the sport. I remember him, he was ragging on somebody in the Rangers. It wasn't a John Ogrodnik, but it was somebody like that. It was like Willie Gruber, you know, or Joe Koser. And
Brian McCullough, there you go.
Yeah, please. And the worst thing was he was like, he's a bum, he's this, he's that. I said, yeah. But you know, when he was a kid growing up, he was the best friggin' player within probably 50 miles. I said, but now when he's playing with all the best, he's a bum.
Yeah.
You know? And now they're from around the world.
How would Gretzky and Park do in today's game?
Gretzky, I think, would still be the same player because he was always thinking 2 or 3 plays.
Yeah.
He was like a chess player. He was thinking 2 or 3 moves ahead. He wasn't. His father, from what I understand, taught him to think where the puck's going to be, not where you are.
Right.
You know, like if he thought the puck was going to be in the corner, he'd be in the corner before the puck got there.
Right.
Park, he'd probably still be a good defenseman. I don't know if he would be fast enough like the Cale Makars and the Adam Foxes and players of that speed and, you know, ability, but he'd still be good.
Yeah, he was actually
I think he would adapt.
Small now too. He was less than 6 foot tall, so he was you know, a little small for these times. And you know, him and Orr were the first real Russian defensemen back then. So it was unique. Now everybody was.
Russian?
They would be, no. So they would.
I thought Brad Park was a Czech.
No.
No, they were two of the best at the game in their day.
Yeah. So how about Robbie?
George, as Steve knows, you wrote a book on M.O. Francis, and you've read it, Steve, I'm sure. Is there anything that you learned from the book, were surprised by the book, interested you?
Well, that was kind of the era that was kind of the era I was referring to, like with the late 60s, early 70s, that they were one of the best teams in the league, and they did everything but win. I mean, they would get in the playoffs. They had good seasons. They'd be towards the top in the points scoring and stuff, and they just never got over the hump.
Yeah, I think one of the most surprising things to Steve about the book was that I wrote it. And so it surprised me too, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, having, over the years, George developed a friendship and a relationship with Emil Francis. And reading the book, you got some of the insight of what he was thinking and why things were done, or, why he did certain things that you didn't know, just watching the game on Saturday night on Channel 9. You didn't have the media that we have today. George and I, when we worked together, we would look at like the little section, the transaction section in the Daily News, 3 days after the draft to see who the hell the Rangers got, if that soon. Yeah. Now, Christ, instantaneously, even as the pick is being handed in, who the heck they selected. Now
you have it on your phone, you have it on your tablet, everywhere, right away, So
instantly. It's almost
sometimes it's too much.
Right. I was going to say, it's almost, they blast you with more statistics. George and I remember when the little blue book, the Ranger Yearbook, was almost a pamphlet. And now you look at it, it's 300-400 pages of everybody in the organization is covered, their history, this, that, and the other thing. It's become on the par with the other sports, the major sports, the departments, the public. There must be 40 people that work for the Rangers now, as opposed to.
Back in the old days, the Rangers had one trainer, Frank Pace, and he did everything. He was a traveling secretary. He had a big black bag he carried with him with all kinds of drugs in it and all kinds of stuff that the players might lose and need. Now you've got trainers for everything. You've got massage coaches. You've got everything. There's a trainer for every part of your body, and there's a whole bunch of people back there. When Emil coached, he was the coach. Now you got two assistant coaches at least, and you got one guy
doing the video.
Up in the booth, watching from above, and
another guy with video and analyzing the video.
You got people picking up their plays on the tablets, and it's exploded into something that's kind of hard to keep track of, but they're doing it, so it must be working.
Yeah, and all the analytics after a while is just too much. When what's his name? Steve Allicat comes on.
You say it's working, they're doing it, it must be this, that, and the other thing. As a fan, is it a better watch, a better game today for the fan than it used to be?
I say as long as ESPN doesn't do it. I hate with the camera angles that they have with the games that are on TNT and ESPN.
Yeah.
Having watched hockey for too long, you're used to the cameras at center ice and maybe in the ends, and the action went left to right. Now you've got these cameras like they have for the NFL hanging over the ice and moving around, and they're showing views that I don't want to see. I just want to see them go back and forth. I can watch the play. You know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Steve, tell us about your son's career in hockey. How did that get started? What was that
I started brainwashing him at birth, At the time, my wife was working, like a part-time job at night, so I was chief cook, bottle washer, and got it all done from when I got home until 7:30 when the Ranger games came on. So he was brainwashed sitting and watching games, probably 3-4 years old. And he liked it. I mean, he was emulating the fact that his father liked it. I guess he started out with his older sisters had the play school roller skates. And he started in the driveway with a plastic stick and a plastic puck. And my mother at the time was his first goalie. And he took a shot and hit her in the shin, and she said, "That's it, no more." And he just kept skating in the driveway, whether it was 20 degrees out or 90 degrees out, and I used to tell him, I had a busted up garage door because of him, and I told him, Christ, the safest place to stand would be in front of the net for how often you hit the damn thing. But from the 4-year-olds, like 5, 6, he started playing youth hockey in New Jersey. And Daddy got to drive him all around the state, and, he wanted to play. And there was one time, there was the tryouts, and I'm in an ice rink in Bayonne at 3 o'clock in the morning for tryouts for a 6-year-old. And I'm sitting there going, I'm out of my mind. But he made the team. He played with that organization. He was captain of the team. He moved through that organization. He wound up playing. For a team called the Wildcats, which was like a junior team in New Jersey. He then finagled his way up to Canada. I think he played in a junior C league in Coburg.
Coburg, that's it. I couldn't think of the name of the team. Okay, Coburg, that's right. Okay.
The Coburg Cougars.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he played there for like about one full season. Like, say, if there was 80 games in a season, he played like 80 games, but over the second half of one season and the first half of like the other. And then he called it quits. He didn't like the looking over his shoulder, because they kept bringing in other players. He just said, Dad, I can't do this. I said, because I'm coming home. I said, all right. He goes, but I'm just going to leave. I said, no. If you're man enough to do this thing, you're man enough to tell him you're leaving. And he did. And then he wound up playing in William Patterson University here in New Jersey for 3 years. And that team did very well. And then eventually he wound up coaching, for like mites and peewees for an organization called the Colonials out in Morristown, New Jersey. And now he's married. He has kids of his own. And it became a little too much. So he still loves hockey.
Yeah.
And probably he now has a son that's about 6 months old, and he's already sitting him in front of the TV watching Ranger games. So
generation, yeah.
Yeah, third generation.
Okay.
Hey,
well, you took, as a sports father, you took Linda and Jenny to their games too, right?
Linda was more interested in the arts, but Jenny played softball. So in other words, it was Robbie in the winter with hockey. Spring and summer or whatever, Jenny was playing in a fall league or summertime. I was doing that with her. So, not so much where have I been. It was like, okay, where am I going this weekend?
Yeah, I remember you.
Hop in the car.
Those days, yeah.
Yeah, we
you
did
were all
the
over too.
Yeah, well, that was the thing. I used to tease my son now that he stopped playing. I said, you played in New Jersey. I had to pay. You played juniors. I had to pay. I said, you get all the way up to playing juniors in Canada. I don't have to pay, and you quit. I'm like, wait a minute. But, I wouldn't trade a minute of it because you made a lot of good friends, families, because you're spending more time with the families weekend after weekend. And, you have some good times. And the kids all get along.
Is it like Little League Baseball? Are there some parents that are just wacko?
Yeah. I was one of them one day.
No, I mean, you weren't wacko in a negative way.
Oh, yes, I was. I told the referee I was gonna beat the crap out of him. No, my son was playing in Staten Island, and it was, I think, mite or squirt hockey, and there's not supposed to be checking. And they were playing in Staten Island, and it was always seemed the kids that played in New York City, they always had more of an edge to their play. Which, okay, if my son was 13, 14, okay. He was like 6 or 7. And he got hit by this kid along the boards, and he got hurt. Not seriously, but for the few minutes, your heart's in your throat.
Yeah.
And the referee didn't do anything. He didn't call a penalty. And my son was like, crying on the ice. Now, granted, he's 6, 7 years old. And I'm at the door of the rink. I'm screaming at the referee. And the other parents are like, stop it. I'm like, no, stupid MFer. I'm going to kick his ass. But eventually I did calm down because another ref or manager for the other team came over to calm me down. And I said, look, it's not so much the play. Hockey is a physical sport. But the fact that he completely ignored that a 6 or 7-year-old got hurt because the other player did something that wasn't allowed or shouldn't have been allowed. That's what got me annoyed. Had the ref called a penalty, I might have been, okay, it wasn't good, but at least the ref saw it and called the penalty. But he acted like nothing ever happened. So, and it's more like, from the standpoint of your kid gets hurt and you see him on the ice, you're like, oh, shit. Because there was a time when he played in college. I didn't go to one of his games, and he got mixed up with a kid, not in a fight, just a collision. The kid went down, and his leg went up in the air. And when his leg came down, it came down on the inside of Bobby's thigh. And he gave him quite a cut where they had to get him to a hospital really quick. And they told him if it had been a little bit deeper or he could have possibly bled to death by the time they got him to the hospital. But that was part of the game. It wasn't like it was done intentionally by somebody. Right. Is my point. You didn't get mad at anybody, or it was like, okay, it happens. But it's like that one game you don't go to. But no, I enjoyed watching him play. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Let's take a second. I was going to say, I want you to complete your thought first.
All right, Steve, did you ever think that Iowa was heaven, like Kevin Costner did? Because you were actually born in Iowa, weren't you? No.
I was born in Hoboken.
Okay, that's right, yeah.
But my father had a job with a discount store, like a Target or Walmart, back in the 60s. And we were in the Midwest. And, I lived in Iowa for about 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. But he had a job where we moved about 4 times in about 7 years, if that long.
Okay.
While he was in Michigan, I was in Ohio, I was in Indiana, and then I was like in Iowa. And you mentioned
Field of Dreams. Yeah.
Field of Dreams. Thank you. And when they come out with the sentence, is this Iowa? Is this heaven, or is this, and he goes, no, this is Iowa. And I'm like, you can't say heaven and Iowa in the same thing, same sentence.
No, it's Iowa.
Yeah. It's corn, it's livestock, But, living in Iowa for those couple of years was like my 2 years of living in Mayberry, RFD, People didn't lock their doors.
You know that picture that's in the back of the book with me with Yogi Berra? That was taken by Steve.
Oh, yeah.
Steve, if your roots weren't where they are and something came along, where would be the ideal city for you to live?
There's a few.
Okay.
Probably any one of the original 6 cities.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I always realized when I lived in Iowa that I didn't have to live in a big city, but I had to be near one. So that if I wanted to take advantage of the sports or with New York, the museums, the theater, I could get to it without it being an all-day trip. Living in Iowa, St. Louis was about 4 hours away by car.
Wow.
And Chicago was about 6, 7. So, I mean, if you wanted to go to a baseball game or something, it was all day. See the event, overnight,
it was a road trip.
drive home.
It was a road trip.
Yeah. So, but, like New York, Chicago, I like Boston. Toronto I like. Montreal I've had a taste of, but no, any of the larger, metropolitan cities. Probably if I had to pick one, I guess Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Glen Hall comes to mind. Not so much the Halls, for some reason, not so much Makita, but Glen Hall. I thought he was very underrated as a goalie back in the day.
He played 500-something games in a row without a mask, and they said he used to throw up before every game out of nerves, which I believe to a point, but he's alive yet. He's in his 90s, but he's still alive, living in Canada. So he survived.
Yeah.
Wow.
Probably of the original 6 goalies back then, he was the only one that's still living. Eddie Johnston from the Bruins is still alive, but Gump and Jack Plante, Johnny Bauer, and Terry Sorchuk, they're all gone. So he's the only one left.
Yeah. And from what you told me, Jackman isn't doing real well either.
Yeah, Jackman's So,
Well, we could all agree on this. Mortality and aging suck.
Mm-hmm.
Like
my father always said. Yeah, as my father always said, whoever said life begins at 40 was full shit. So,
yeah. Hey, George, take a second to catch up on your hockey news career and Stan Fischler. Now, I'm so proud of you. What's going on?
Yeah, well, I've kind of become a hard act for me to follow. I haven't been in 2 weeks now, so I haven't written anything really lately. I'm working on the general manager's book, and I want to try to interview Craig Patrick soon and see what he has to say, and then. Since we had him on the podcast, I had my foot in the door that way, and he seems like a very nice man, very, very genial, and willing to answer my questions, so that should work out good. We had him as a guest on the podcast a couple of weeks ago.
That was terrific.
I think
and also George and I are starting to work on a book too.
That's right.
The 100-year anniversary of the Rangers in 2026.
100 Ranger memories, and we're looking forward to all the listeners sending in their memories. We're maybe about halfway to 100 now. I know Ralph is going to send us one about Val Fontaine, and I had a guest on a couple weeks ago who will probably send us a couple.
Yeah. There's a Facebook page, 100 New York NYR Memories.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anybody who's listening, if they have a story or a memory or just want to make a general comment about the Rangers over their, interest or their lives.
Yeah.
If they had an interaction with a player or something, that was unique or something to share.
Yeah.
Wow.
And,
the perfect assignment for a Walter Mitty type guy, and we all are Walter Mittys on some level. I know it came out in our voices when we had Craig Patrick on. We realized we were talking to a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
And wow.
I was running down his resume because he's got quite a long resume, and I was about halfway through, and then Ralph came in. I said, no, wait a minute, I'm not done. There's more, and then because he got the Lester Patrick Award. He won 2 Stanley Cups after he got screwed by the Rangers. He's in the Hall of Fame. He did the 1980 Olympics with Herb Brooks. It was quite a thrill, And now
it was a thrill, and what was really cool, it was like talking to a cousin. He's just a regular guy. He's not
talking baseball.
Right.
Yeah, they don't have that aloof attitude,
No.
And you don't have that in current athletes in all sports.
No.
Life has changed, society has changed, and I don't think for the better necessarily. The game notwithstanding.
But I think hockey players in general are probably the most generous and amiable, professional athletes.
Yeah.
I'll never forget. I took my kids one time to a Yankee game, and we got the tickets through the bank,
Yeah.
And we were down by the Chicago White Sox dugout. The Yankees were playing the White Sox. And there were like 4 or 5 kids, yelling and screaming at Frank Thomas. Like, hey, Mr. Thomas, hey, Mr. Thomas. He didn't even turn and acknowledge them.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, if the hockey thing, you got kids holding up signs, it's my birthday, can I have a stick? And, the next thing you know, Ovechkin's handing over a stick over the glass, It's just a completely different family and hockey is a family. Yeah. Whether you're a fan, a player, or whatever, it's a family.
Hey, I'm a few years older than you guys, but not that much. And I can remember going down to the Biltmore and the Roosevelt Hotel where the players would come in, and it was incredible. I can remember sitting with Gordie Howe in the lobby. He was just sitting over there. And I walked over and I said, Mr. Howe, do you mind if I talk to you? Or this? No, sure, come on, sit. Let me, what do you want to know? This, that, and the other thing. And it was universal. There was no one that said, no autographs, this, that, and the other thing. Johnny Bauer, you mentioned him before. I can remember talking to him. Armstrong. It was just a different experience for a young fan. And I can't imagine what it is now, not having that intimacy with the player. Eddie Shack, for instance, just terrific guys. And I'll save the Val Fontaine story for the book. How about that?
Okay.
But
so there's one game against the Chicago Blackhawks at the Garden, and I was hanging around outside the garden after the game, looking for autographs, and the Blackhawks were coming down the ramp, and the fans were really ragging on every Blackhawk, everybody, just saying terrible things, to them. And all of a sudden, Bobby Hull comes down, and the place got quiet. Everybody got quiet. He came over and he shook all our hands, autographs. Just a very classy man. So that's the kind of the kind of class that you don't see much anymore.
Yeah.
And it builds memories to the kids.
Yeah. Didn't you used to go out? What was the restaurant outside the garden? Charlie O's?
Harry.
Didn't you used to
Charlie
go?
O's and Harry M. Yeah.
Yeah, because you used to go out that way out of the garden, and occasionally you'd run into a player here and there, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, I met Guy Lafleur and Steve Shutt outside the garden. That was, Guy Lafleur, Christ. That was something, I remember when Brad Park first came up, his first exhibition game. He was kind of hard to miss because he had the baby face and he had those ears sticking out, So, and I saw him and I gave my program to autograph, and he hands it to the guy next to him with glasses on, and I didn't know who it was, and it turned out to be Walter Tkachuk. So just one of those things,
Well, I remember one time in the garden. Yeah, there was one time in the garden. I happened, the ring that was up behind the boxes, George.
Yeah.
I remember walking back there, and I actually walked right into Brad Park. We bumped shoulders, and I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry." I'm like, "Oh, wait a minute, you're Brad Park. Hi, how you doing?" But like you said, it's just in a lot of ways it's changed. Because in today's environment, they have to be concerned about if they say something or if they do something, it winds up plastered on all the social media, so it kind of spoils it in a way too.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you about Brad Park. When I interviewed him for the Emil Francis book, I had a set time to call him, and he it was pretty early in the morning, and I got 45 minutes to an hour out of him. Then he said he had to go, but he could tell that I wasn't finished because I usually ask questions in order, and I wasn't halfway through his career yet. And he said, "Why don't you call me back the same time tomorrow?" Now he volunteered that. He didn't say, I'm done. That's it. I'm off. But he said, "Call me back same time tomorrow." So I had breakfast basically with Brad Park twice, two days in a row. So that was great.
Well, you met Jacquemin in Mickey Mantle's restaurant, didn't you?
No, I was over there to interview him. His agent, I got friendly with his agent. His agent used to advertise in Sportstat, and I was set up to interview him over breakfast in his hotel. He was in town for something, and I spent a good hour and a half with him that day too. He was just very talkative. He was telling me about how he broke up with his wife and just all kinds of stuff, So.
Hey, Ron, this all started with George with a little, I'll say, in today's standards, a little rinky-dink Ranger newsletter. Back in the day, it was no, but it was 6 or 8 pages. He typed it, he printed it, he folded it, he mailed. It was a one-man show, and it was kind of like a recap. It's kind of like a recap of the week in the Rangers season or year-end wrap-ups. And I said, from that, I've always been amazed that George went from that to now he's writing articles for Stan. He did a couple of books, obviously, where he was talking to Francis and Park and to Jacquemin and to Villemure and to Vickers and all of the childhood idols that I had. And then, now he's writing articles for Stan Fischler in the Hockey News. And it's like, wait a minute, I know this guy. But it all stemmed from that newsletter, Sportsnet.
Yeah, I've been very lucky. I mean, things just kind of fell into place. I can't say I had a plan involved in my mind. It just happened. I just kept doing what I like to do, and it worked out. So, and I plan to keep doing it until I can't, So,
yeah.
I'll see what happens.
Well, what did Branch Rickey say? That luck is the residue of planning and organization, or something to the effect of that. It isn't just luck. It never is. People say, well, I got lucky here, I got lucky there. No, you set yourself up for that by all the things you did in the past. Right. And Steve, I don't know if you know that George and I wrote a book together, and our expressions were to each other, well, we just got to get shots on goal, just taking shots at it. And but it's never purely luck. So you're being self-effacing, George. I'm proud of you just for being mentioned in the same column with Stan Fischler.
I know. Well, the Ranger PR guy years ago was named Barry Watkins, and he gave me great advice. He says that it never hurts to ask. So you ask, and sometimes the person says yes, and sometimes they say no, but it never hurts to ask. And
it's like women. It's like women and meeting people. You ask. The worst that could happen is they could say no.
Yeah.
That's yeah. Hey,
you learned that as a young guy. You go and ask the girl out, and what can you do? They're going to say no. Okay, and sometimes they say yes.
Yeah.
Right, and to not take it personally. It's like selling whatever you're selling. They may be saying no to you because they have a boyfriend, or because they're looking for somebody else. Just you can't take things personally, and you have to let it roll off your back every now and again.
Yeah, but with George, it started out, like I said, like recapping the New York Rangers season or whatever, and it's, like with him asking, or, one call led to another call, to another person, to another contact, and, it's a hobby has become much more than just a hobby now. When
I did Sportstat, my only regret is that I did it from 1988 to 1993. I missed the Stanley Cup by 1 year. I should have did it one more year, but who knew? Who knew? There's no way of knowing.
For 50 years.
Yeah.
Hey, they're working on 30 years now almost.
In 94, yeah. Going to be 30 years.
So it's like 04, 14, 24. It'll be 30 years. They're halfway home.
Yeah.
Now, those numbers, when you put them out there, how quickly time goes.
Oh yeah.
If we knew as kids that it's also fleeting, let's put it that way. Hey, we're up against it time-wise. Close us out, George.
Okay, Ralph.
Went quickly.
All right. Anyway, thanks for coming on, Steve. It was a great podcast. To have you on again sometime. We can share more memories of the Mets and baseball and hockey and the Jets, the New York Jets. We didn't talk about the Jets. And
that's right. Nobody talks too much about the Jets.
One of my favorite Jets from the 68 team championship, a great lineman, Dave Herman. Passed away very recently. And, each time an athlete, a hero, a guy passes away, it takes a little out of you. It's that one hurt.
We're at that age where all our heroes are going to die because they were all older than us, and we're getting older. So it's just the cycle of life. and
Yeah.
it's just the way it is. I mean,
Hey,
Yeah, well,
the
even
only
like with
hero
the-
I have left is George Grimm.
There you go.
So
Yeah,
you
it's
stay
like the
healthy,
Stones.
George. Very nice meeting you on the phone, Steve. I hope you'll
Same here.
befriend me on Facebook, and we can keep in touch that way, as or if not through George. And I hope you'll be back, because
Yeah, I look
I've
forward to it.
enjoyed
I
it.
had a good time doing this.
good.
Oh,
Glad you
good.
liked it.
I appreciate the invitation, and I was nervous thinking, gee, I don't know what I'll talk about, and I didn't shut up.
Yeah.
The typical
well, that's-
Irishman.
All we do is
whole
schmooze.
thing.
All we do is schmooze. It's like being in the living room, and it was very comfortable having you,
Yeah,
as it were.
I had a good time as well.
good.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Steve. Comfortably
Yes.
Zoned Radio Network. I'm Ralph Tycho, and this was my pleasure. Retro Rangers in the Zone. And I will post this within a few hours and send you both links.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Be
Bye-bye now.
well.
You too.
Adios. Thanks for listening, everybody. Happy trails, and adios.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.